Hello followers and welcome back to my Minecraft tutorial. This is episode 74 and in today's episode we are going to be talking about the Anvil. Once again we are going to be talking about our dear friend here, the Anvil, but we are going to be talking about some of its more in-depth mechanics today. So now that we have the Blaze Farm here, what we can do is we can actually do a lot more with this as we have a better way of getting experience now. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the more in-depth stuff with the Anvil, including some mathematical formulas, and just delve into how this works so that we can actually create the best gear we can for next episode when we go and face the Ender Dragon. So that's kind of the aim. So between this and the last episode I've been enchanting a bunch of different items here. We have some tools, armor, bows and books. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about how each of these properly works with the Anvil and how to work out costs and so forth. So just a quick recap from the last Anvil episode. The Anvil can do 4 basic functions. It can rename items, it can repair items with a material of its base. So for example, on an iron chestplate or iron helmet you can repair with iron ingots, and the same goes for tools. It can repair with tools of its type, so you could repair a diamond pickaxe with another diamond pickaxe, and its final usage is to combine items with enchanted books. So they are the 4 different things that the Anvil can do at base value. Now, there are costs in experience levels in order to do that, and the first thing that we are going to be looking at really is going to be working out an item's base cost and how the base cost sort of impacts on what we're doing. So let's take a look. Okay, so the base value of items. So the most important concept with using an Anvil is actually the base value of an item, and that is in experience levels. Other than combining with enchanted books, any change made to an item will cost its base value plus costs for the change. An item's base value is the sum of the cost of its enchantments, so each enchantment has a different amount of levels associated with it, and we'll talk about that in a moment, plus a charge for the number of its enchantments. Note that the item's material does not affect its base cost, nor does its order of its enchantments. An unenchanted or unenchantable item has a base value of 0. So the formulas for working out the base value are as follows. So for each enchantment there is an enchantment cost, which is cost per level times level. And what that is basically each enchantment, for example sharpness or smite or efficiency, has a cost per level. And then the max level is how high it can go. So for example, let's just take a look at my block breaker here. We have unbreaking 3 and efficiency 4. Now the cost per level of efficiency is 1, and we have efficiency 4 on there, so the total cost for efficiency on this pickaxe is efficiency 4. Now unbreaking has a cost per level of 2, and the max level of unbreaking is 3, so that is 6. So far we have worked out that there is 10 levels there. Now there is also a cost for the number of enchantments you have, and that can vary obviously depending on how many enchantments you have. If it's 1, then the extra cost is 1. If it's 2, it's 3. If it's 3, it's 6. If it's 4, it's 10. And if it's 5, it's 15. And I don't believe there's any more items that you can get more than 5 different enchantments on, but there we go. And by the way, this is more straight from the wiki because the formulas are very hard to remember, so there will be a link down below to the wiki page, and on the wiki page there is actually a set of tables here for every enchantment and how much each is per level and the max level that it can go to. So now for working out the base cost of this item, which we have just done, you need to make sure that you do the following formulas. So let's just do a quick recap of that. So it's for each enchantment there is an enchantment cost and the cost per level times level. So on our, let's do our sword. So we have sharpness 4 here. The cost per level of sharpness is 1, and the max level is 5, but we have sharpness 4. So that is 8. And then we have knockback 2. And knockback 2's cost per level is 2, and the max level is 2, so that's 4. So we're at 12 at the moment. And we also have looting 3. Now the cost per level for looting is 4, and the max level is 3, so that will be 12. So in total, the base cost of this sword is 24, because we have 12 from the looting, 8 from the sharpness, and 4 from the knockback. So that is how you work out the base value of the item. So no matter what you do with the item, before you even put it in the anvil, that's how much it's going to cost as the base value. Okay, so now let's talk about the prior work penalty. Now, regardless of the work being done, be it rename, repair, or combine, there will be an extra cost, and that is the prior work penalty. And that is applied to work on an item which has been previously altered in an anvil. So, if the item has been renamed at any point, the penalty is always 2 levels, regardless of further alterations. So, if I rename a pickaxe like I have this, there will be 2 levels added onto the base cost, and then it will never ever increase. For an unrenamed item, the prior work penalty is 2 levels for each repair or combination that an item has been through, not including the first one. When combining 2 items, you pay both their penalties. So if you have an unrenamed item, then you will always pay at least 2 levels, and then for your second repair, it will be 4 levels, and then for the third one, it will be 6 levels. So it gradually increases until it becomes too expensive. But if you have a renamed item, it's always going to stay at 2 levels. So I can repair this pick indefinitely. It's always going to cost me 17 levels. And that's because when I repair it, there is going to be the base cost, which we worked out as, I believe we worked it out as, let me just double check that. Efficiency 4 is 4, and unbreaking is 6, so 10. The prior work penalty on this pickaxe is going to be 2, so that's 12. So the remaining 5 levels are from the repair of the item, and that bumps the cost up to 17. And this pick will indefinitely take 17 levels to repair. So that is the prior work penalty and how the prior work penalty works. Now for this bow, when I repair the bow in the anvil here, that's going to cost me 2 levels because it's the first time I've ever done anything with this bow. But if I use the bow again and then need to repair it, it's going to cost me 4 levels instead of 2. So it's a gradually increasing effect, and if it's a really nice tool that you have or a piece of armor, you're generally going to want to avoid not renaming it. You always want to rename it. Now, the important thing to consider here with the prior work penalty is when you enchant something, it doesn't have any prior work penalty induced from doing that. It is only from work on the anvil, not the enchantment table. Okay, so now we understand the Now we understand the prior work penalty. We can talk about renaming an item and how much that will cost. So renaming anything with a durability will always cost the base value and the prior work penalty plus 7 levels for the first time. So that is why whenever you put an item into the anvil that has not been enchanted before, like this pickaxe, it's always going to cost 7 levels to rename it. So if you use an item and then repair it, for example, and then want to rename it then, the later rename will be the base value plus the prior work penalty plus 10 levels instead. So renaming something becomes very expensive. You want to do it early on if you can to save you trouble later on with an item. Now, simultaneously repairing and renaming an object costs both charges, but you only pay for the base value and the current penalty once. An item which has been renamed has its prior work penalty set to 2 remaining, so regardless of later work. That's kind of confusing how they put that on the wiki. So it says here, basically, an item which has been renamed has its prior work penalty set to 2, and what that means is it will never increase from 2. So no matter how much work you do on it, the prior work penalty is always going to be 2. That's the advantage of doing a rename. Renaming an item back to its default name, for example, if we renamed my pickaxe back to iron pickaxe, that does not revert the prior work to full cost again. As a consequence of the above, and using the same example, oh, that's an example, I don't want to talk about that really. But that's what renaming does in a nutshell. Renaming an item without durability costs 5 for the first time and then stays at 9. So if I try to rename this stone brick block, it will cost me 5, and then afterwards it would cost me 9 if I wanted to rename it again. Now if I place a block in the world like this, then it's going to lose its name. And named items do not stack with regular items, they're classed as something else. So that's more of a map making feature than something that could be used in survival. So that's pretty much everything to do with renaming. It's pretty simple to understand. All that it needs to be is that when you enchant an item you need to rename it so that the prior work penalty will always be set to 2 and will never increase. That's basically renaming in a nutshell. Or if you really want to, just to make a cool name for your item. But really, there are some other things mentioned here, but that is the basics that you need to know with renaming and what it does. So now let's talk about unit repair. Now unit repair is different to the other form of repair, which is using an actual item like this. So for example, if my iron chest plate was depleted all the way, like this one, let's use this one as an example. If my chest plate is like this, then I can repair this using iron ingots to fully repair the chest plate. Now, the repairing a tiered target item using units of its material, so in our case that would be iron for the iron chest plate, it will restore up to 25% of total durability per unit and cost the sum of the unit costs of each unit, in addition to the base value and the prior work penalty. Now that's kind of confusing how they've put that. Oh, I see, and it costs the sum of the unit costs of each unit. Somebody hasn't really wrote this very well. It's very confusing, but we already have the base value and the prior work penalty. We know that. So this one's going to be pretty low. So then for each one of these it's going to cost 2 more levels, which is what it's telling me the repair for this is. So the unit cost is normally 1 plus the number of enchantments on the target item. Ah, I see. Now it makes sense. So basically it's always going to cost 1 plus the number of enchantments, so that's 1, so it's going to cost 2 every time. For diamond tools though, the unit cost is up to 3 plus the number of enchantments on the target item, depending on how much durability the unit is repairing. All but the last unit to take the full cost. For a full repair of 390 durability, the last unit costs 1 less for restoring less than 300 and another less for restoring less than 200. The material to use is in the original name of the item except for chainmail, which you can repair with iron ingots. Materials include leather, wooden planks, cobblestone, iron ingots, gold ingots and diamonds. Common tools you cannot repair this way include bows, flint and steels, shears, fishing rods and carrots on a stick. Now, repairing many units at once incurs 1 cost of its base value plus the prior work penalty, as well as only adding 2 to the future prior work penalty providing the item is not renamed. So if you want, in a very basic sense, if you want to repair an item with units of its base, which is in our case iron, it's always going to cost you 1 plus the number of enchantments on the target item per unit. Now if you're doing this on diamond tools, then it's going to cost up to 3 plus the number of enchantments on the target item. So for me to repair this, for example, with 1 diamond, the cost is up to, so we'll just say 3 if we're going to go at the high end there. and then the number of enchantments, which is another 3, so that is 6. Now, depending on how much durability it's restoring, will also depend on the cost. So, for the last one, as the wiki was trying to tell me, then potentially the cost could be less if there is not much repair going on. It's kind of a way of sort of scaling how much repair is being done to how much you pay in experience levels. So this can be quite useful. It can certainly be useful with armor because it saves iron ingots in making a brand new chest plate. It would only cost me 1, 2, 3, 4 over the 8 that I would need to make the chest plate. Now if this was renamed, then it really would be cheaper because the prior work penalty would not increase as a result of doing that. So moving on from that, let's talk about combining items, and this is where it gets quite complicated because there's a lot of things that can happen here, and there's a lot of numbers kind of moving around in this bit, but the anvil can be used to repair 2 items of the same type, or an item with an enchanted book. This only applies to items with durability, however, so swords, tools and armor. The first/left item is the target item, and the second/right item is the sacrificed item, which will be destroyed. Combining 2 similar items does either or both of 2 things. Each of these cost levels, if they're both done at once, part of the cost will be shared. The target will be repaired, adding the durability of the sacrifice plus a bonus up to the item's maximum durability. If the target item is undamaged, there will be no charge for repair. It also tries to combine the sacrifices and enchantments onto the target. If the sacrifice has no enchantments, only weaker versions of the target's enchantments, or should I say, or only weaker versions of the target's enchantments, then there will be no charge. Otherwise, you will pay for enchantments added, and for some cases where the transfer fails, as well. So, for each enchantment on the sacrifice, if the target has enchantments as well, if the sacrifice level is greater, the target will be raised to the sacrifice's level. If the sacrifice level is equal, the target gains 1 level unless it is already at the maximum level for that enchantment. And if the sacrifice level is less, then it does nothing to it, basically. If the target does not have an enchantment, it will gain all levels from the sacrificed item. So certain ones cannot be combined on the same item, and that is Sharpness, Smite and Bane of Arthropods cannot be on the same sword. On tools, Fortune and Silk Touch cannot be put together, and on armor, Protection, Fire Protection, Blast Protection and Projectile Protection cannot be combined. So put simply, what this means is when you repair something with something of the same type, let's just go ahead and make ourselves an iron pickaxe for purposes of demonstration. Now, I'm not going to be able to do much with this because this is as much as it can be unbreaking, and I'm not going to get efficiency 4. So if this pickaxe here, this one is the target item. So when I take this out of the anvil, you're going to get this one back. Always you will get that one back. If I flip them around, then I'm going to get the other one back, which we don't want really because this one is renamed. Now, what happens with this is, if this pickaxe had efficiency 5, then this pickaxe would become efficiency 5. If this pickaxe had efficiency 4, then it would increase this one by 1 level, which is also efficiency 5. So this is probably better for swords than pickaxes. Now, if this had something like efficiency 2 on it, then it will do nothing to it, because there's no point in doing anything to it. So that is how that works. Now, the total cost for combining 2 similar items is the sum of the base value, as always, prior work penalties for both the target and the sacrifice, and if renaming, the extra cost of renaming on top of that, and if the target item is not at full durability, the repair cost of that amount to repair it as well, depending on the sacrifice, and if the sacrifice has enchantments, the enchantment cost for that as well. So repairing 2 items can be very expensive because there's 5 things there that potentially could be added. So typically most people would prefer to use enchanted books over trying to combine 2 items with enchantments on it. Now there is a table for costs with sacrifice repair, and again this will be in the description as there is a link to the wiki page. The target item will end up with the sum of both durabilities plus a little bonus, 12% of the item's maximum durability rounded down up to the maximum. So it's kind of a bit random depending on what you're doing. And to make the best use of a bonus, repair when the total item durability of the pair is no more than 88% of the maximum. For tools and swords, the 12% bonus is 3 durability for gold, 7 for wood, 15 for stone, 30 for iron, and 187 for diamond. You may want to use F3 plus H to show the numeric durability of your items. So this is an inventory tooltip. I discussed this in my season 1 of my tutorials. You can actually see how far spent your items are. In my case, you can see here. So as I say, there is a table down below, in the link below, if you want to check out the individual numbers for that. And there is quite a complex mathematical formula involved in that. So if you put it simply, if we take out this bonus malarkey, you're going to end up with the target item will end up with the sum of both items' durabilities plus that bonus. But if we leave the bonus out, then the total cost for combining the 2 items will be the base value of the target, prior work penalties on both the target and the sacrifice. If renaming, the extra cost of renaming. If the target item is not at full durability, then there will be a repair cost on top of that. And if the sacrifice item has enchantments, then there will be an enchantment cost, providing that the enchantments are of at least the same level and something can be done with the enchantments. Now this is really complicated to understand. I'm trying to explain it as basically as I can, but it can get very confusing getting into all of this stuff. Now, it says here, for each item type and the sacrifice durability, the repair cost can be anything from 1 all the way up to 17 if you're using diamond. Now, this is quite complicated here as to how they've scaled it, and I'm not going to get into that because it's really not needed. All it is depending on how much you're repairing will determine how much you're going to pay in experience levels for that repair. So I'm going to leave that alone. I've just given you a basic overview of how the mathematical formula works. Now, for combining enchanted items, this is just the enchanting cost. If you're going to combine 2 enchanted items, if the enchantment is incompatible with the target, then add 1 per level of enchantment. If the enchantment is compatible for each level the target will gain, add twice the cost per level from the base value table. So what that's trying to say is if the enchantment will go onto this pickaxe, say if we had efficiency 4, then what it's going to do is for each level the target will gain, add twice the cost per level. So in our case that would be, instead of 1 it would be 2. If the enchantment is compatible but both the target and the sacrifice are at max level, add the cost per level once. So if you had 2 efficiency 5s and you repaired them, it would just add the 5 levels for the cost for repair. So now if the new enchantments are added, you need to add the number of new enchantments plus the number of final enchantments minus 1 and then plus 1. So quite a complex formula to doing that. That's how to work out the cost for combining enchanted items. Now there is a different cost for combining an item with an enchanted book. So if you're going to use an enchanted book, it works slightly differently to using an item, and the good news is that it's a lot cheaper. And the costs for enchanting with books expose more internals of the Anvil system, but while this makes them more complex, they also include some major discounts compared to item combination. Naturally, repair costs do not apply because there is no repair going on, it's only enchantments. So normally enchanted books will only have one enchantment, but books with multiple enchantments can be produced by combining two books on an anvil. Such books will have their own prior work penalty. So if you combine two books, I don't know, let's just put these two together. I'm not actually going to put them together, but you can actually put them together. Yeah, this would work actually. It's going to cost 8. Then you could apply this to an item, but the problem with that is then this is going to have its own prior work penalty of 2 levels when you go ahead and use it. So you're best off adding one enchanted book at a time so that you don't pay the enchanted book's prior work penalty when adding it onto the item. So first, the following costs are added together. Start with the target's modified base value, where the cost per level is halved to a minimum of 1 per level. So the target's base value when using a book to repair, a book to add something, is always halved. So if you think about efficiency on this pickaxe, if we had efficiency 4, then it would, instead of costing 4, it would cost 2. Then you need to add the prior work penalty on top of that, and possibly the prior work penalty of the book, depending on if you've combined books or not. And then for each enchantment level, the target will, well, let's, missed a bit. If the target is gaining any new enchantments at a cost plus the number of new enchantments plus the final number of enchantments minus 1 plus 1. If the target is, for each enchantment level, the target will gain, add the cost per level halved to a minimum of 1 per level, and then you need to save this number. For each enchantment, both the target and the book already have a max level, add the enchantment cost per level once. If the item was already renamed and is being renamed again, add 3. This is half the basic rename cost rounded down. If you are somehow enchanting an item without durability, only pay 2. That's if you're in creative. The above sum is then halved and rounded down. It could round down to 0. For each book enchantment that's incompatible with the target, add 1 enchantment level. Add 1 per enchantment level, so add 1 XP level. For each enchantment level the target will gain, add again the cost per level halved to a minimum of 1 per level. If the target is being renamed, add the basic rename cost, that is 7 for items with durability and 5 for other items. Now that is very, very confusing. There's a lot of stuff going on there when actually doing these things. So there is a modified base value and lots of other things going on. So if you don't understand, don't worry. The basic premise with using enchanted books is that it's cheaper because there's no repair cost. However, if you start combining enchanted books, you're going into a whole new territory, and I would typically avoid doing that. You're going down into a whole new territory, which means that there's going to be a lot more costs that were involved prior to that. And again, there will be a link to the wiki page if you want to explore this more for yourself. But the cost for repairing an item with an enchanted book is going to be, the cost for combining an item with an enchanted book, not repairing, is going to be cheaper. And there are some special uses of enchanted books, and the fact that enchantments can be raised to their maximum power, which could be beyond the enchantment table's range. So sharpness 5, efficiency 5, those types of enchantments. There is also any item with durability can be enchanted with an unbreaking book. Shears can receive silk touch, allowing them to gather cobwebs, and axes can receive some of the sword enchantments, sharpness, smite, and bane of arthropods. Enchanted books can be combined with each other, currently even in survival mode, to produce higher level or multi-enchantment books. So as we saw there, we could combine blast protection and aqua affinity and put them together. Now the understanding of this is very high, and I wouldn't worry about it too much. The ones point I was trying to get across is about how to rename items, and that will save you levels later on, and in some cases mean that you can constantly repair items. So if this tutorial has been a bit confusing, or you've not understood it very well, then I apologize. This is something which involves some very complex maths, and I wanted to just kind of talk about it for those who can understand and can follow it. But if you can't, then don't worry. It's very complex as to the way this actually works. There's a lot of numbers moving around, and I don't understand it all. But the important things to note were about renaming items, and that saves you levels, and how repairing items works as well. So I think that that's going to be just about it for today's episode. Next episode we will be doing something a lot more fun, and that is going to be going to the end and slaying the Ender Dragon. And again, I sincerely apologize if you found this tutorial perhaps not very good. It's very, very hard to understand this stuff. But I hope that I've helped in some way. There will be a link down below to the Anvil mechanics page. It's very hard to explain. It's easier to read than it is to try and explain and put into words what it's trying to say. So that will be down below if you want that. And I hope that you have enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you next time. So until then, see you later and have a good day.